Mia Rivera thought her 5th wedding anniversary would be a celebration of love, but when she discovered her husband, Carlo's secret affair with their maid, Liza, the night meant to honor their vows turned into one of betrayal, exposure, and a deadly twist no one saw coming. Mia Rivera woke up early that morning, sunlight pouring through the lace curtains and painting soft patterns on the bedroom wall. The date on the calendar made her smile. 5 years of marriage. It wasn't always perfect, but she believed they had built something strong, something worth celebrating. She had spent weeks planning every detail of the evening. There would be a candlelit dinner under the stars, a playlist of their favorite songs, and a small cake just like the one from their wedding day. She wanted it to feel magical, to remind Carlo of the love that started it all. The house smelled of fresh lily, her favorite flowers, placed neatly on every table. The garden was trimmed, the lights hung, and the dinner table set with delicate silverware. Everything looked perfect, yet something about Carlo's silence over breakfast unsettled her. He scrolled through his phone, barely responding to her cheerful plans for the night. His eyes seemed distant, unfocused, like his thoughts were elsewhere. When she asked if he was excited, he smiled faintly and said he was tired from work. That answer didn't sit right with her, but she decided to let it go. As the morning passed, Mia busied herself with decorations, instructing their maid, Liza, on how to prepare the dishes. Liza had been working with them for 3 years, quiet, polite, and trustworthy. She had almost become part of the family. Mia never once thought of her as a threat. She even confided in her about the surprise anniversary plans. Together, they decorated the patio, laughing as the wind tangled the fairy lights. But every time Mia turned her back, Liza's smile faded, replaced by a shadowed expression no one noticed. By afternoon, the atmosphere in the house grew tense. Carlo came home earlier than usual, but instead of helping or showing interest in the preparations, he went straight to his room. Mia followed a few minutes later to leave his gift on the bed, a framed photo from their wedding day and a handwritten letter about how much she loved him. That was when she noticed something strange. On the back of his chair hung his suit jacket, and as she picked it up to dust it off, a faint floral perfume drifted into her nose. It was not hers. It was a scent she had never used, sweet and heavy, sticking to the fabric like a secret. She stood there for a long moment, the jacket in her hands, her heart tightening in confusion. She tried to brush the thought aside, telling herself it could be from someone at the office or an elevator, but the unease refused to leave. She folded the jacket neatly and placed it back, trying to shake the growing doubt. When evening arrived, everything looked like a scene from a dream. Candles flickered, the table shimmered under golden light, and the gentle sound of music filled the air. Carlo came down wearing a forced smile, and for a moment Mia believed she might have been wrong. Yet, throughout dinner, he kept checking his phone, barely meeting her eyes. The uneasiness that had been whispering all day now screamed inside her. She didn't know it yet, but the night she had hoped would rekindle love would instead open the first crack in a perfect life built on lies. The next morning began with the soft clinking of dishes from the kitchen. Mia stirred in bed, still replaying the previous night in her mind. Carlo had fallen asleep quickly after dinner, leaving her alone with her thoughts and a quiet ache in her chest. She tried to convince herself that everything was fine, that he was just stressed, but the perfume scent she found on his jacket kept returning to her memory like a haunting whisper. Hoping a new day would clear her doubts, she got up and went downstairs. Halfway down the staircase, she heard something unexpected: laughter. It wasn't loud, but it was light and intimate, the kind that sounded comfortable. It came from the kitchen, where Liza usually prepared breakfast. Mia paused, her hand gripping the railing as she listened. When she stepped closer, the laughter stopped. She entered the kitchen and saw Carlo leaning casually against the counter, phone in hand, while Liza stood near the stove stirring a pot. Both of them looked startled. Carlo straightened immediately, saying he was running late for a meeting. Liza quickly lowered her gaze and mumbled that breakfast was ready. Mia nodded, pretending not to notice the strange tension that lingered in the air. When Carlo left, Mia sat at the table staring at the untouched plates. 2 coffee mugs sat side by side on the counter, one of them had lipstick on the rim. Her stomach turned. She picked it up, stared at the faint print, and then slowly placed it back. The silence in the room felt heavier than ever. Every detail around her, the unmade bed upstairs, the faint smell of perfume, the matching laughter, started forming a picture she didn't want to see. For the rest of the day, she watched quietly. Every movement between Carlo and Liza seemed suspicious now. When she passed by the living room, she caught a glimpse of Liza smiling at a text before quickly hiding her phone. That evening, Carlo came home late again, his shirt wrinkled and his excuse unconvincing. Mia didn't argue. She simply smiled, served dinner, and watched him from across the table. Her silence unsettled him more than questions ever could. That night, after everyone went to bed, Mia sat alone in the darkened living room. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock on the wall. Her eyes fell on the small security monitor that displayed footage from the CCTV cameras installed around the property. She had never really paid attention to them before until now. Curiosity turned to dread as she began scrolling through the recorded files. Most of it showed normal house routines. Liza cleaning, Carlo coming home from work, nothing unusual. Then she found a clip from 3 nights earlier. The timestamp read 12:07 a.m. It showed Carlo entering the kitchen in his pajamas. A few minutes later, Liza appeared. They spoke softly, their gestures subtle but close. Mia leaned closer to the screen, her heartbeat thundering. When she saw Carlo gently brush a strand of hair from Liza's face, her breath caught. The screen froze at that moment, his hand lingering, her eyes looking up at him, and Mia's world fell apart. She sat in silence for hours, staring at the frozen image. The evidence she had been trying to deny now stared back at her in cruel clarity. Every doubt had become truth. And as tears silently rolled down her face, something inside her shifted. Love turned into disbelief, disbelief into fury. It was no longer about heartbreak, it was about betrayal, and the quiet rage of a woman who had just discovered she'd been living a lie. Mia woke the next morning with swollen eyes and a numb feeling that seemed to sit heavy in her chest. She had barely slept, replaying the footage again and again until dawn. Each time she hoped she had imagined it, but the screen told the same truth. The man she loved had betrayed her with the very woman she trusted most. Her mind drifted between anger and disbelief, yet her face showed none of it. When she went downstairs, she greeted both Carlo and Liza with calm politeness, as though nothing had changed. The quiet mask she wore would become her greatest weapon. Throughout the day, she observed every small detail she had once ignored. She noticed how Carlo's phone vibrated more often than usual, how he stepped outside to answer calls, and how Liza always found a reason to pass near him when he returned. Every smile they exchanged, every glance they thought went unnoticed, confirmed what the footage had shown. Still, Mia never confronted them. She spoke kindly, offered meals, and went about her routines as though her world hadn't shattered. Beneath the calm, she was planning something they would never see coming. She decided she needed more proof, something undeniable, something that would expose them not just to her, but to everyone who had ever believed in their perfect marriage. That night, she placed a small recording device beneath the sofa in the living room, its tiny red light hidden by the shadows. She told Carlo she was meeting a friend for dinner, but instead of leaving, she parked her car a few meters from the house and waited. The windows glowed softly, and through the curtains, she saw their silhouettes moving. A few minutes later, she heard faint laughter drift through the night air. It was the same sound she had heard before, familiar, intimate, unmistakable. When she entered the house later, she acted as though nothing was unusual. The next morning, while Carlo was at work and Liza was out buying groceries, Mia retrieved the recorder and listened. What she heard made her hands tremble. Their voices filled the device, Carlo's low tone mixed with Liza's nervous laughter. They spoke about her, about how careful they had to be, and how much longer they could keep their secret hidden. Each word felt like a knife twisting deeper into her chest. But as she listened, her sorrow slowly transformed into something else. She stopped crying, her breathing steadied. The plan began to take shape in her mind with frightening clarity. That evening, she stood before the mirror, studying her reflection. Her face looked calm, almost serene, but her eyes held something new, a quiet determination. She would no longer be the woman deceived in her own home. She would turn their lives into a spectacle neither of them could escape. So she made her next move, a message to friends and family, inviting them to a renewal of vows dinner the following weekend. She wrote warm words about love, trust, and celebration, concealing the real purpose behind her smile. As she pressed send, she looked toward the closed door of their bedroom, where Carlo's muffled voice spoke to Liza on the phone. Her lips curled into the faintest trace of a smile. The truth was coming for them, and she would be the one to deliver it. The night of the dinner arrived with a quiet tension that filled every corner of the house. From the outside, it looked like a scene from a perfect celebration, soft golden lights strung across the garden, the scent of roses drifting through the evening air, and a long table set for guests dressed in their best. But beneath the beauty was a storm waiting to break. Mia moved gracefully among the guests, greeting them with a composed smile that hid the storm inside her. She looked radiant in her ivory dress, her calmness so convincing that no one could have guessed the darkness behind her eyes. Carlo appeared uneasy from the moment he stepped out of their bedroom. He wore the suit Mia had chosen for him, yet it hung awkwardly on his frame, as though he were wearing gilt instead of fabric. He glanced at Mia often, searching for signs of warmth, but found only polite indifference. Liza worked quietly that night, dressed in her usual maid's uniform, her hands trembling slightly as she served drinks and adjusted plates. The tension between the three of them lingered like a shadow no one could name. The guests laughed, clinked glasses, and toasted to love and long marriages. Mia smiled and nodded at every word, her mind focused on the small remote hidden beneath her napkin. The projector screen behind her had been set up under the excuse of showing a video surprise. She had told everyone it was a tribute to her 5 years of marriage, a collection of memories. No one suspected what was really about to play. When dinner ended, Mia stood slowly and raised her glass. Her voice was steady as she thanked everyone for being there, her words flowing with grace. She spoke about loyalty, honesty, and the beauty of trust. Her guests listened with admiration, unaware that each word was a blade disguised as poetry. Carlo shifted in his seat, growing uneasy. Then Mia turned toward the screen and pressed the button. The lights dimmed and the room fell silent. At first, the screen showed their wedding photo, a smiling couple drenched in sunlight, holding hands. Then the footage changed. The timestamp appeared in the corner, 12:07 a.m. The guests leaned forward, confused. The next image showed Carlo walking into the kitchen in his pajamas. Moments later, Liza appeared. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Their quiet exchange filled the space. Then, on screen, Carlo reached out and brushed her hair back. Gasps erupted from the guests. Someone dropped a fork. Liza froze where she stood, her face pale, while Carlo's glass slipped from his hand, shattering against the floor. Mia didn't move. She stood still, her expression calm as her world publicly burned. The footage continued for a few more seconds before the screen went black. No one spoke. Then Carlo stood abruptly and stormed toward the door, shouting her name, but Mia didn't respond. Liza, panicked and crying, ran after him. Moments later, the sound of an engine roared to life, followed by a sharp screech of tires. A thunderous crash echoed through the night. Guests screamed and rushed outside. There, beyond the garden gate, Carlo's car had slammed into the fence. Smoke curled from the hood, the headlights flickering weakly. Liza's body lay beside the wreck, motionless on the ground. Carlo was slumped inside, blood trickling down his forehead. The scene looked unreal, as though the night itself had shattered along with their lives. Mia stood by the doorway, unmoving, her white dress glowing faintly in the chaos. She didn't cry, didn't scream. The truth had done exactly what she intended. It destroyed everything it touched. The hours after the crash blurred into a haze of sirens, flashing lights, and voices shouting commands. Police cars surrounded the house while paramedics rushed to the wreck. Guests huddled in shock, whispering fragments of what they had seen, trying to piece together the chaos. Liza was pronounced dead at the scene, her body covered with a white sheet. Carlo, barely conscious, was pulled from the driver's seat, his face pale and streaked with blood. He was taken to the hospital under police supervision, his hands trembling even as they strapped him to the stretcher. Mia stood quietly at the edge of the garden, the soft glow of lanterns still flickering around her like ghosts of the evening that had turned into tragedy. When officers approached her for questioning, she answered in a calm, steady tone. She explained that it had been a simple dinner to celebrate their anniversary, that the crash had been a horrible accident. No one could prove otherwise. The CCTV footage she had shown was real, but the crash had not been part of her plan. Still, many wondered if fate had taken sides, or if it had followed the careful path she had laid out. In the following days, the story spread across television, newspapers, and social media. The headline read, "Anniversary Dinner Turns Deadly After Infidelity Exposed." Public opinion was divided. Some called Mia a victim of betrayal, praising her strength for confronting the truth. Others whispered that she had known exactly what she was doing. That humiliation and heartbreak had pushed her to orchestrate the entire downfall. Mia said nothing. She attended Liza's funeral in silence, her face hidden behind dark sunglasses. Carlo remained in the hospital, drifting in and out of consciousness, unable to escape the nightmare he had created. When he finally recovered weeks later, police arrested him for reckless endangerment and vehicular homicide. Witnesses confirmed that he had been shouting, distraught, and intoxicated before he got behind the wheel. He was sentenced to prison after pleading guilty, his once carefree smile now replaced by an empty stare. From his cell, he wrote letters to Mia, begging for forgiveness, but she never responded. Mia sold the house within a month and disappeared. Rumors said she moved abroad under a new name, far away from the gossip and pity that followed her. Some claimed she started a small business in Singapore, others said she lived quietly near the sea. No one really knew. What remained certain was the legacy of that night, a story that blurred the line between love, revenge, and tragedy. Years later, a journalist tracked her down for an interview. Time had softened her face, but her eyes carried the same quiet strength. When asked if she regretted anything, she paused for a long moment before answering. Her voice was calm, almost detached, as she said, "I didn't destroy my marriage, the truth did." And sometimes the truth doesn't save people, it ruins them. The interview went viral, reviving public fascination with her story. To this day, people still argue about what really happened that night, whether Mia planned it all, or whether fate simply played its cruel hand. But one thing was certain. On her 5th wedding anniversary, love had died not in a moment of passion, but in the slow unraveling of secrets, proving that sometimes the most dangerous thing a person can do is uncover the truth.